Welcome to Stand By Please.
With me, Antonia Collins from the Bamboo Manager Project.
And me, Jackie George from Sharjah Performing Arts Academy.
In this podcast, we talk all things stage management. Join us and our guests as we try to answer the question, what is your stage manager really thinking?
I would like to talk about kindness.
Yes.
And the reason I would like to talk about kindness is because there's a lot of talk about it, hashtag be kind. But when it comes to work, there seems to be some weird thing at play that people think that kindness means you're weak. It's like kindness is reserved for social, but not for work. And I was like, why is that? Can you not be, disciplined and work hard and have high standards and be kind? Isn't that possible?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about this and then sort of thought myself in a circle. And kindness is hugely, it's very trendy, isn't it, at the moment, kindness. Everywhere you look, like you said, there's these whole movements, these whole hashtags, which seems to have replaced movements now about being kind. But what is being kind? And what, for me, when I think about kindness specifically in the workplace, somebody asked me, well, what's the kindest thing that's happened to you at work? And I really struggled.
I guess for me, being kind means that I am listening, that I am aware of other people's situations, that I'm not just kind of, bashing on with my own things. There's a million ways to do things, isn't there? Many years ago, one of my particular light bulb moments were when I realised that not all stage managers were like me. Do you know what I mean? So when I realised that you could be, quite quiet introvert and still be a brilliant stage manager, and you didn't have to be like me out with the cheerleading pom-poms, cartwheeling down the corridor, that was a real kind of light bulb moment, that different people bring different things to the party. And I guess for me, one of my being kind things would be making sure that people are working in ways that are appropriate to them, and I'm not trying to fit them into my box, maybe. So I don't know what people's issues is with it, but I feel like there's an issue. Maybe it's the wrong word. Maybe that's actually the issue.
Well, I'm really glad you said listening and talked about listening, because for me, when I spent some time thinking about it, that's what I kept on coming back to. And for me, kindness is actually making the time and the space to listen to people. Does that mean then that you always act upon what you're listening to? No, actually, because some of the trickier times in my company manager experience is when the person who needs some kindness just needs to be listened to. And quite often, people know the situation that they're in is difficult for whatever reason and can't necessarily be changed, or there might not be much that can be done about it. But the actual act of just listening, giving them space to listen and giving them space to talk and be listened to, is as much kindness as they need at that moment that we can offer within the parameters of the workspace. Because I was thinking about moments of kindness that I've been shown when I've been working, and it's not always linked back to the actual process. So it's not a moment of kindness about a piece of work that I've got to do, or a rehearsal that we're in, or a show that's about to start. It's always to do with the peripheries. It's always to do with somebody might know that you're having a bit of a rubbish day and just come and put their arm around you. Well, not at the moment. Metaphorically put their arm around you from 2 meters away. But they've taken that time out to notice that you might not be having a great day. So I think sometimes you just want to be heard, don't you? And if you're not heard, I think that's what becomes frustrating. You don't always have to act on it. So listening to me is a major aspect of, and with that, I think if you think about theatre and think about the process of making theatre, can we be kind in theatre? That was my next thought. I thought, is it set up to be kind?
Well, slight sidebar now, but I feel like it's important.
Yeah.
One of the things I really, really dislike is all of the kind of memes. Is that what you call them? I never really know what they're called. Are the things, like that imply the stage manager is God and should always be obeyed. Now I think about stage management in terms of collaboration and, working together and creating something and building something together as part of a team. And undoubtedly, stage management demands there to be moments where the stage manager is in charge. Yes, absolutely. But I hate that kind of concept of, dictatorship, really. I can't think of a better word for it.
Well, you just hit the nail on the head, because everything about kindness and hierarchies don't sit next to each other. So I think the moment that you've got a hierarchy, and we've talked about hierarchies before, to try and then align that with kindness becomes really, really difficult. There's an amazing book I'm reading at the moment. It's called Humankind by Rutger Bregman. And he's a historian, and he talks about actually the basis of human nature is that we are kind. And actually, if you look and think, well, we're obviously not kind, look at the wars in the world, look at the illness in the world. Current example, we talk about vaccination poverty and how some countries haven't even started their vaccinations and some countries are hoarding vaccinations. Actually, what is controlling that are leaders. So the moment you have a leader and you have somebody in charge who has their own personal manifesto, the moment that kindness can't really happen. And if you took all that away, if you look at community living, if you look at sort of early evolution where people were nomadic and traveled around and they didn't have a leader, then kindness absolutely prevails and is so clear. And I think if you look at theatre, whether that's a stage manager, and I completely agree with you, I hate the idea of, the stage manager and then everyone must listen to, and like you said, there has to be moments where you take control. And I think that goes back to space to listen, that I can absolutely listen. I might not be able to do anything immediately about it or significant about it to change that issue, but I've listened. Or whether it's the director or whether it's the producer, then if you take those hierarchical structures away, then it becomes easier to be kind, because I think to be kind, you have to have time. And if you don't have time, then it becomes more difficult. So if I've got a deadline to meet, or we've all got a deadline that the show's opening or the tech has to be finished, that's my prime time for being a bit shouty and a bit, I'm going to say aggressive. I'm not... but that's when those not kind traits are going to show themselves.
Oh God, I remember saying to a student once in a fit up where they were just so slow, and I just remember shouting from the seating back, "Move faster!" And he was like, "Oh my goodness." The older I get, I've got so many thoughts going around my head now, but the older I get, the more I believe you get way less from shouting. That is a lack of maturity on my behalf, that at times in my stage management past, I have felt it was appropriate to shout at people, which was really my frustration. You can push things forward and make things move quicker, literally, but without shouting at people. And this fundamental idea about being kind is just about being a decent human being, isn't it? Well, I was thinking, about leaders that I've worked for that I would put in the kind, not so kind categories.
Can I just jump in? What's the balance?
Yes.
So, I mean, this is so sweeping and so generalized. But if you look at the people you've worked with that have maybe been in those leadership roles, whether it's directors, producers, whatever it may be, in a percentage split, where would you say the kind, not so kind breakdown would be?
Well, and it's difficult, isn't it? Because what do I mean by not so kind? Some people are just very matter of fact in work, aren't they? Am I saying that they're not kind? But I've definitely worked with people whose behaviours would fall under bullying. That I think we are safely agreed on that one, that's something that we see in the name of the creation of art that makes bullying okay. And, you know, clearly it's not okay. And also, you know, the way people respond to the way they're treated is very much down to them, isn't it? You know, how many times have we said the only person who can make the change is you? So, you know, you might get shouted at by a director, and some stage management would go off and cry about it and be really upset, and other stage management go, yeah, all right then, that was fair. Yep, no, I'll crack on with that. So how you respond to it is also part of it. I think there's a weird thing at play with women working with other women. I don't know, women aren't very good at helping one another out sometimes.
I don't think the theatre community is very good at helping each other out, because I think, you know, and that's to do with the way that it's set up. And I think because if you look on social media, the majority of us are self-employed, we're freelance, we have to make our work, we have to make our own work, we have to promote ourselves. And I think as much as we are on social media, oh, so-and-so's got a grant from wherever, well done, that's amazing, as they secretly think, oh, why wasn't that me? Or whatever it may be.
Because we're freelance, we're always in competition with one another, aren't we? But because you become more secure in your own skills, and you know there are other people who work in, you know, company stage management, but only you do it in your way, which will be the right fit for some shows, and somebody else will be the right fit for another show, and that's fine. I was thinking though, I wanted to say before I forget about the kindest thing somebody's ever done for me in work. Because I couldn't think of one. Like you, I was a bit like, bought me a cup of tea in a tea break when I didn't have time to take a tea break. That's a kind thing, isn't it? And I totally appreciate it for those who are listening. But actually, a director did a very kind thing on a show a couple of years ago where I was having a family crisis, and we were in a preview, and they'd heard about it from somebody else, and they came up to me. I go get a bit choked, talk about it now. And they came up to me and said, look, I've got some black clothes, I'll go put them on, I'll run your track tonight if you feel you need to go now. I didn't, it wasn't an emergency, but I just thought I was blown away by that little act of kindness by somebody else. That it was not somebody that I worked with a lot, it wasn't somebody that I knew very well, but the fact that she had heard it from somebody else, found me and offered to do my track in the show, I thought was a really kind thing to do. So clearly it does happen. We just have to think about it a bit more. Absolutely,
it does happen. And that is a really kind thing, and that's a thoughtful thing, isn't it? The cup of tea, absolutely classic example. Funnily enough, I put that to Twitter this afternoon, and the lovely Lisa Hall replied, actually, someone bringing you a cup of tea when they don't ask and they know you just need it. And that happens quite a lot for stage managers, doesn't it? When you just haven't got time to get to the tea room. But it goes back to those moments and those random acts of kindness coming from a place where somebody just recognizing and having the time maybe just to see what's going on. It's also much about being observant, isn't it? And knowing what's going on around you.
But did you just give a better word than kindness? Is being well, Jackie George, is being thoughtful in your working process the kind of more business-like language than being kind in your working process?
Maybe it is.
I don't know, you know, I just but when you said thoughtful, and I was like, yeah, that is, that you're doing a 360, you are taking on board all of the considerations. And sometimes you have to make tough decisions as a team leader, and sometimes you have to say, oh, look, I'm really sorry, but we do have to work this, whatever. But you make those decisions with thought and with care. Is that the equivalent of being kind?
Dependent on your place within that team. If you've got agency to support that thoughtfulness and that kindness, what do you do? So you listen. Like you said, sometimes you don't have the ability to do what you want to do to be kind, but you just have to find the solution. So, okay, let me give you a scenario. You're in last session of tech. You've got the last 5 pages to do in an hour. Your lead comes up to you and says, oh, I'm really sorry. My babysitter or whatever has, can't make it to do the school run or whatever it is. I need to go. Meanwhile, in the other ear, the producers go in, you've got to get this finished. We've got dress tomorrow or first preview or whatever it is. What do you say to that person, isn't it? You've got no currency or sway in order to do that. I think that's the bits I find challenging. You don't go into stage management not to be kind. Like you've got to be something a bit sadistic about a stage manager who doesn't think of other people. Why would you do the job?
Yeah. I'd like to say, though, you have picked about the worst case scenario that you could possibly manage there. As you started off down that track, I was like, really? Because that was like an impossible example, because you literally can't keep everybody happy. I mean, I feel like we should at least maybe give some solutions to a scenario like that, because otherwise we will leave our listeners, holding on. Obviously, checking that they've been through all of the options that they can to pick said child up. Is anybody else available? I personally am thinking currently at this precise moment in time, could I spare an ASM to go and pick up the child from school? Or the option is, going to the producer and going to the production manager and talking about a different slot. Do you just dry tech with that without that actor and keep going? Or do you say, right, we're going to finish now and then we're all going to come in, the first hour of the call tomorrow is going to be finish it off. Some of them are instant decisions, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? If your lead actor comes to you in exactly the same setup and says, my wife has just been in a car crash, I need to go. You'd be like,
I'll be ordering the cab for you to go.
Yes,
right now.
yes. That's a no-brainer. Do you know what I mean? That's easy, because there's no other answer. You like you say, you'd have to be absolutely beyond weird to say, no, you've got to stay at that precise moment.
And interestingly, I know there was a huge move from Pippa, and a lot of places signed up to the more flexible, more adaptable working hours. But in practice, how many of those companies and organizations actually put that into motion?
An American stage manager had written about how people were quite derogatory about the fact that she'd had a child. And she was like, but that's crazy, isn't it? All the things that make me a good stage manager are amplified in my approach to parenting. I'm not going to take a job and not know that my childcare isn't covered, not once or twice. I've probably got a third backup, a fourth backup. And I was like, yes, isn't that fascinating that we don't tend to think about it in that way?
But also, I think stage managers are a group of people who would do maybe too much to not let it impact their work. I remember actually working a job once, and it was Mabley's, that was an act of kindness, actually. It was Mabley's first school nativity. But I was going to be in first dress, I think. I can't remember, first dress, or one of the pivotal. They're all pivotal in that week, or a week and a half, aren't they? So in my head, I was like, I can't go to the school nativity. I've got to be here. If I wasn't here, the world's going to fall apart. Until the producer found out about it, actually, and sat me down and was like, are you bonkers? You go to the nativity. and we'll sort out for that dress or whatever it was to happen. So that was a real moment of kindness. Going back to the point I was making, is that stage managers are the ones who make the least fuss about sorting out that personal stuff and trying not to bring it to work. Whereas I've been seen situations observed from the outside where certain theatre practitioners, bring their child to the technical rehearsal. I would never do that. I'm not in that position. But as for a moment of kindness, you make it happen, or you turn a blind eye, or whatever it may be.
I feel like I'd like to point out in, full disclosure, that if either of my children listen to this episode of the podcast, that I actively sought opportunities to go to work during school plays and shows.
I wish I had done the dress now.
I only went to sports day once. What is it about theatre that means that some of the behaviours are acceptable? Do you know what I mean? I think that's one of the things that will have changed in this year. I think a lot of practitioners have had quite a lot of time to consider and think about their working practice. And I really hope that actually some of that kind of, to my mind, quite old-fashioned, and that doesn't mean that we won't work hard, but that we're just going to be a little bit more, I don't know, what's the word? Generous with it.
Yeah, and I think that has to come from top down. I think it's the people who set the tone, then it filters through the company and the organisation in the process. Because if you haven't crammed in like something into every last living second of the rehearsal process or tech or whatever, if you're not trying to make a £50,000 show for £2.50, then you've got the license you've got more freedom to have that thoughtfulness for your company. And I really remember when we were recruiting for the We Made This productions, when you do your job description, and my top criteria was, who do you want to employ for whatever, technical stage manager, designer, was nice people.
Yes, yeah.
And I don't know, I don't think that doesn't affect quality. Actually, I think if you can see the cohesiveness of a company that work well together, that are thoughtful, I think it shows in the work.
And, we all know that what makes you feel valued in your job has nothing to do with the wage. I mean, the wage should be,
it helps.
It helps, and it should be a living wage, and it should reflect your responsibilities. Yes, absolutely. But you could be paying somebody a lot of money and you still don't feel valued in the job because of the way you're treated, because of a lack of respect, because of your not being listened to. Value has nothing to do with the paycheck. Beyond the money. I don't want to play down the money part, obviously, but how you feel about a company, how you feel about a director, how you feel about a designer, and whether you want to work with them again has way more to do with the respect that you have for one another, doesn't it?
Yes. If you work with somebody who's not kind, I've made decisions before and said, well, I'm not going to go there again. Sometimes you have to, because of the money. Like you said, you can't downplay the money. And that's where people's hands become tied, isn't it? Like, because you don't have that longevity of employees and you're not building up that relationship, they're looking at you as a stage manager or as an actor for a 6 week, a 6 month, a 12-month contract. And as they don't, there's enough people coming through. If they don't employ you for the next one, it's no great loss for them. So I think it is a responsibility. My kindness toolkit would include time, bigger budgets, less egos. It's far too many egos.
And some of that ego stuff comes from people not actually being secure in what they can do. It's often about insecurity, isn't it? That kind of side of it. And, you know, when you've done a few stage management jobs, and if you're not, you know, just starting out, then you are able to make that luxury of a decision of going, I mean, there are definitely people on my I never want to work with them again list. Oddly enough, they've never asked. But when you're starting out, you don't get the luxury of choice. And I worry a little bit that it's going to be like that when shows start up again, because everybody's waiting for a job role, but there aren't going to be as many shows, not certainly all at the same time, is it? It's not going to be like one day we're closed and the next day every single theatre and every single show is operational across the world again. And so you are going to get people who are having to make choices about maybe going back onto a show or going to work with somebody that they got on their never work with again list. However, when people ask me about this question, I always think, well, knowledge is power, isn't it? You know what you're going into a second time around. And actually, there are certainly people that I have warmed to, because oddly enough, they've changed and maybe things have happened to them.
I do think, though, there's only so many times you can excuse behaviour.
Oh, but we're well, actually, do you know what? I think we're possibly into the next episode. Because
look at that. Yeah,
I know, right? Because next time we decided we were going to talk about boundaries. And I think some things about behaviours will come up in boundaries, don't you?
That's a beautiful segue.
But I'd like to say I am absolutely taking away your idea about thoughtfulness, being thoughtful in your practice. I'm going to try that next time somebody asks me, and I'll report back to you what I think their response is.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand By Please. Join us next time when we'll be exploring boundaries. Until then, Jackie and Antonia, off cans.